This episode is brought to you by Kimia and Nejat with Exit Realty Metro.
Kimia and Nejat is an experienced real estate agent who prides herself in finding the perfect home for her clients. Kimia can help you with a comparative market analysis to help determine the value of your home if you're planning on selling, or help you determine the going rate for the neighborhood you're moving into. She can also work with you at your pace.
You can reach Kimia by calling 902-880-8429 or email kimia@exitmetro.ca.
Also, you can find her on Facebook at Kimia Nejat, Exit Realty Metro. This is Matt Conrad.
And this is Mike Tobin.
Welcome to the Afternoon Pint.
Andrea Menard is an award-winning actor and singer-songwriter, public speaker, and a top leader in feminine leadership. Andrea is a proud member of the Metis Nation of Canada. We encourage you to go to AndreaMenard.com to learn more about her and visit the section titled Sacred Feminine Learning Lodge if you would like to check out more about some of her wellness programs.
All right. Cheers. Cheers. All right. So this is Matt Conrad for the Afternoon Pint. Mike Tobin is not here. He is he's ill. So we have to do this one alone, which is sorry for him. But we have Andrea here, which I'm very, very excited about. Actually, what I want to start off with is you have a couple traditional names. So I'd like you to introduce yourself with all of your names, please.
Well, usually I introduce myself, in the way I was taught. So, Tanchi Kiwao, hello, everyone. Andrea Menard, Dishnikashon. Notagoyudin, Dishnikashon, and Ninshkotekwe. I'm a proud Métis woman from Treaty 1 territory in the homeland of the Métis, and currently living in the unceded traditional territory of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam people, also known as Vancouver. But I'm visiting in the beautiful Mi'kmaq for 4 months while I'm shooting a TV series, so I'm really honored to be here.
Yeah, no, we're very happy to have you. And actually, you're here recording, so I mean, we can dive right into that. Obviously, you're here recording Sullivan's Crossing, so obviously a big deal. I think so. The show seems to be quite a hit.
Yeah.
And people are just jumping on it. Everyone in Nova Scotia is excited about it.
Yeah.
It's being broadcast into the U.S. now.
Yeah.
On the
CW.
I just figured that one out because your co-star Chad Michael Murray, which many people would be familiar with, he was promoting it, and so people were kind of jumping down his throat a little bit about because of the strike, but the strike is not in Canada. So
exactly.
Why don't you give for anyone who hasn't seen it, I will admit I've only seen the first episode.
Yeah.
But why don't you give kind of a rundown of what the show's about?
Okay. Well, to me, it's a family show. It's a romance show. It's a story about a community, really, about a woman originally from small town Nova Scotia who becomes a big, star neurosurgeon in Boston, but circumstances bring her home, and of course there's love and potential love and this, and I play a character. So Sullivan's Crossing is basically Sully Sullivan is the patriarch of the community, and
that's Scott Patterson, right?
Yeah. And Tom Jackson and I are the aunt and uncle of the community. We're the Indigenous characters, although we're not pretending to be Mi'kmaq people, even though we're on Mi'kmaq territory. We're both from the prairies. We're not pretending to be anybody else but who we are. I'm Métis, he's Cree. So we're Métis and Cree couple from the prairies who have been friends with Sully a long time and are part of this community. And so when the daughter comes home, it's like a huge reunion, but there's some things that everyone has to work out. So it's, there's some things that have to work out.
Yeah, and so since you kind of mentioned, we can talk a little bit about it, because Tom Jackson, obviously, I think anyone who grew up in Canada in like the
he's
80s,
a legend.
90s, absolute legend. Just everybody knows. And you were saying beforehand that you've known him quite 2 decades or something like that.
Yeah, we go way back. In fact, the Huron Carol, people will know him because he toured with big, stars and musicians all across the country, And about 20 years ago, he decided to do a smaller version because the show kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
And the money that was supposed to be raised for the food banks got less and less and less because of the overhead. So 20 years ago, I was on his last big Huron Carol with them, and it's a 20-year anniversary this year. We couldn't believe it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to kind of to listen in on that, how would they have the ability to listen in on? Like, when's that coming up? When when that's the 20th anniversary?
Well, I don't think it's. Special? I don't know if it's going to be a 20th anniversary. Okay. I know it's going to be a fundraiser, and it's going to be on TV. And I don't have all the information yet, so hopefully
we'll find that out.
By the time this airs, we can get some information.
Yeah, because that would be cool. So, obviously, big show coming on here. What really kind of drew you toward this particular show? And what? How'd you audition? How'd you find out? Like, what? How'd you get here? Kind of thing.
It's a typical. Maybe it's not a typical story because I've been in the business long enough to watch the what do you call it? The cycles of interest and lack of interest of Indigenous people and representation on screens.
Right.
So when I first joined the union and was a part of the community of acting, it was a sort of a renaissance of Indigenous storytelling because APTN first came on board. For people who don't know what that is, it's the Aboriginal People's Television Network. And so all of a sudden, there was a place for Indigenous voices and stories to be heard, but told by Indigenous people, meaning directors, writers, producers, actors. And we all sort of developed our chops during that time because we were getting leads. We were getting our own stories. We were all of a sudden not the stereotypical role at the back of we were playing leads and strong characters, and we were being written with juicy fullness. And so anyway, I've been in this business long enough where I watched that sort of a wave of interest by the networks of Indigenous storytelling and stories, and then it waning as though one casting person actually told me, Indigenous people are out.
Oh, really?
Literally had the gall to say that. Didn't say Indigenous people, though. They're out. He literally said they're out. It's like, well, not in Indigenous territory. No, they're not.
Yeah.
So anyway, I have had some frustration, obviously, and like unlike some people, because I'm a singer as well, and because I'm a speaker as well, I would tend to back out of the grind, whereas other people who are in this business only, that's their job, right? So they sort of stayed in and transformed it probably more than I did a little. So when it came around to this new wave of interest in Indigenous people, I was sort of, oh, really? You didn't see me a month ago, but all of a sudden you want to see me now. So I was a little, jaded. Yeah. And I had a talk with my agent saying, I'm a little jaded, and I need your help. Like, you have to intuitively say no to the projects that just wouldn't feel right. And if you feel like there's one for me, then bring it across the desk.
Right.
And this Sullivan's Crossing was one of those ones that they brought across the desk. And I think also is that people, we'd all been through isolation and COVID, and I had went from doing my new moon circles and ceremonies and stuff in private to going online and helping people because so many people were struggling, and I wanted to be a source of light and love, and yes, my guitarist lived 2 provinces over. I couldn't gig even in the same bubble. We couldn't bubble together, and it's really hard to gig over Zoom.
Yes, it is.
So that wasn't great. And I wasn't acting. I wasn't doing what I normally did to bring my contribution to the world. So when I started bringing these uplifting ceremonies and circles and those kind of things to the world, it felt really gratifying, and it felt like, no, if I'm to be of service, just let me be of service in however way I can. But because I haven't performed in so long, I thought, well, maybe that's leaving my life. Maybe that's leaving. cut to the next scene. So Sullivan's Crossing had this character who was sort of positive influence, and I didn't know Tom Jackson was attached. I didn't know anything, but I liked these characters. She was a positive auntie, you know, in the Indigenous community. The auntie is like a strong, beloved
in many cultures,
right?
Yeah, in many cultures, they're looked at with like, you know, there's a certain respect that they have, and they, you know, they can pass on some wisdom, and they can be there, that like a motherly figure, but not motherly. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, and she's and she's not just a blood auntie; she's like the adopted auntie.
Right.
She's, and in a way, I'm the matriarch of the community because there isn't. Sully's not married, and, you know, so I'm not matriarch of the community.
Right.
So I really liked that aspect, and that, you know, it wasn't a serial killer in the, you know what I mean? Like, yay! It had some, you know, some easygoing problems, you know.
Right. Well, it's funny. So you say serial killer because when I was first kind of introduced to who you were and all this stuff, I started doing some research and everything, and I remember seeing your picture. I went on your website and seeing your picture and everything, and I was just like, wow, she looks familiar. And I couldn't quite place it, and it was driving me insane. So I was like, I gotta find out this, like, where I know her from. And I should have almost known, because it's pretty much almost always the answer of, I know that person, but where?
Yeah.
Supernatural.
Oh, no way!
And that's actually what popped up, because I'm a huge Supernatural fan. Oh. And I was like, as soon as I was looking through your filmography and everything, I was like, oh my! As soon as I saw Supernatural, I was like, yes, I know. I was like, yes, that's where I know her from, because it seems to be like that, where I'm like, look, I'll see an actor.
It's got to be a
actress.
TV, right? It's got to be something.
Well, it has to be something, but also Supernatural. It's like, it's happened to me like at least a few times, more than a handful of times, where I'm like, I know them from somewhere, and then I'll look up, find out what their name is, and I'll look them up on Wikipedia, and I'll be like, Supernatural. I should have just knew this anyway.
That's my show.
It's a show I love. So it's kind of cool, because you were on a show with Scott Patterson, who was on with Jared Padalecki and everything, so there's a whole full circle. You guys have this tight community there, obviously. But anyway, that's how I
love it.
Like, triggered in my head.
I love it.
It was cool, right? And you had a great role. Like, you're the...
Yeah, but if you're a Supernatural fan, then you know I was told the truth and didn't die at the end.
Right.
That's exactly. A huge deal.
It is a huge deal. Yeah.
I know.
So you get to be like, you know, this kind of like badass cop who gets to who
saw the truth
and interacts with the devil's son.
Yep.
Right? So it was pretty cool.
And didn't die at the end, because they always die.
Because they very rarely.
They kill us off. I know.
Most times, the other actually, one other was another woman cop who got to stay for a couple seasons.
I know. I'm like, geez, if they would have kept going, maybe I would have come back.
Maybe, that's true. And so anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. I'm a huge Supernatural fan, so when I was talking to my co-host, I was like, she was on Supernatural. So yeah. Anyway, that being said, so you were talking about like healing and things like that. So you do have, I know, like, so really what you are is singer, songwriter, actress, speaker, wellness trainer. And what I thought was really interesting, and that I'd really like to have some conversation with, is the Sacred Feminine Learning Lodge.
Yeah.
I did some research. You have 6 offerings on there. So why don't you talk a little bit about those, because I think that's pretty interesting stuff.
Okay, well, the Sacred Feminine Learning Lodge is the place that I put this new passion. You know, when you said all those things, I always say to people, oh yeah, okay, I'm a Métis medicine whale, you know? Yeah. I'm an actor, I'm a singer, I'm a writer, and I'm a messenger or speaker or trainer. Yeah. But when the day I discovered the center point of that medicine wheel was when everything sort of made sense.
Okay.
And I like to say that I'm a facilitator of the rise of the sacred feminine. Now, what does that mean exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, according to my elders, we're in a time where humanity is finding its way back to center. Okay. And that means that especially in the non-Indigenous Western way of looking at the world, it's considered a backwards way in many ways, where we've lost the connection with the earth,
right?
The source of all wellness.
Right.
We have forgotten our interconnectedness to each other and to every living being.
Yep.
From the stars down to the microbes to the COVIDs, like the little tiny things.
Yeah.
We're interconnected, and we can't ever separate it. And that there's a deep respect for life givers, for women, for children, and again, everything feminine in this world has been devalued. And that doesn't mean women necessarily. It is, obviously, but it's the feminine within every human being. All the feminine, like nurturing men have suffered just as much as women have, because the feminine aspect of life is devalued in this Western way of looking at the world.
Right, yeah.
So, to me, when I heard these elders talk about that this is the time, we're in a time where it's changing.
Yeah.
And there's been many little, people coming out of fasts and lodges and saying these almost prophetic words that it's time, it's the time, it's a change is upon us. And once I heard enough of them, they sort of collided into this understanding. I'm like, that's what I'm here to do. I'm part of this.
Right.
And yes, everything that comes out of my mouth, whether I'm writing a song or creating a story or a theater piece or a movie, it tends to come with healing and bringing people together. That seems to be what I want to share.
Right.
And so it's a positive uplifting of humanity, remembering who we are, which is caretakers of the earth, which is interconnected, which is children of the earth, and that's what I want to be. That's what I'm here to do. So with all of that, I realized, well, how do I now, if I know that's my centerpiece, what do I do with it? And that's when I developed my company called the Sacred Feminine Learning Lodge, because I thought, well, and it was all during COVID when it all crystallized. So right at the beginning. And I think I had plans for things to be in person and have this course here and this course, but because of COVID, because it became so much bigger and so much more wider needed, that more people found me, and the Zoom world sort of found me, and I found them. So I have some offerings, and one of them is I think I mentioned it earlier, a New Moon Circle, which is free for anyone who wants to join. It's on a new moon every month, and we do a ritual to help us get in touch with our beautiful inner worlds. So there's that. I have the honoring of the 4 sacred bodies. So, and then the lead like a goddess and reclaiming the 4 goddesses and matriarchs and training. So it all comes from this recognizing that all beings that have been trained under this Western model have devalued the feminine. Mm-hmm. And whether that's even as simple as not allowing ourselves to feel, not allowing ourselves to cry, that's devaluing the feminine.
Okay.
Being so busy in our masculine natures that we do and don't know how to stop doing. Right. The feminine nature is to sit, receive, listen. And that in itself is revolutionary, right? Yeah. So all of those things, I can go from the minute to the wider picture, but that's what I'm here to do, is just to help people learn how to care for themselves and others by valuing the things that have been taken from them.
I see. What I find so much, what I find so very interesting about this stuff, because I'm very much a science guy, but I also love the spirituality of it. And I think they coexist. Yeah. And in one of our previous episodes, we've spoken to a gentleman who talked about learning from our Indigenous brothers and sisters about how to handle PTSD, and it's something that really stuck with me. And they had an expression about combing the snakes from your hair. So they'd go to war and they'd come back home, and it was the combing the snakes from your hair. So allow them to go into a lodge and basically sort out their demons before they're integrated back into society. And I love that. I'm by no means an expert, but I'd love to. How do we capture that and help people in that way? And I think you're right. Going back to basics, going back to that connected to how we're all connected together. We're connected to the earth. How do we get back to that simplistic way? Because we feel like we're advancing, and in many ways we are. Mm-hmm. But in some ways we almost need to look back to ground ourselves again. Yeah.
In a way, what you said an example about It's a very complex topic. I love it.
Yeah.
But I would say that the one difference between the Western way of looking at the world and the Indigenous way of looking at the world, and there's many, but one for sure is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So, like you mentioned, PTSD, things like PTSD or just everyday traumas that affect, Western mind would just say, oh, you gotta. So if we slice our arm off, or slice half our, we know to fix and sew it up, sew the wound of the physical.
Yeah.
But the Indigenous way of knowing is that trauma to the body also caused trauma to the emotional body and the spiritual body, and it has more of an effect than just the physical. And so you tend to more than that. So our medicine people were so much more, they had two-eyed vision, as an elder once said. Two-eyed vision, which means they're not seeing with only one eye, they're seeing with the whole picture.
Yeah.
And I think the Western world is beginning to recognize that there is more than just that physical realm or the mental realm, those are the two valued. The physical and the mental are very valued. But the other two, the spiritual and the emotional, which live in the feminine world, are starting to be integrated. So that's a huge difference, but one that's hopefully starting to meld.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing, at least from my experience, is we're seeing, there's less focus clearly on like religion. And more focus on that spirituality, I feel.
I mean, I would say it seems that way. It seems that way to me.
It seems that. Which I think is good. I think there's something like, I think, most people feel like there's something greater than themselves, and they kind of call to that or whatever, right? And I think we're all just kind of figuring it out as we go along, right? We plan on talking to a lot of different people in this, and there's some things that we're going to talk to people who we may not necessarily agree with, or we may agree with, or whatever. We may be skeptical of certain things. But, I find it all interesting, and I think there's room for it all. So just learning and growing from each other and stuff, I don't know.
And searching for meaning, really.
100%.
If that isn't something that all human beings share.
Yeah.
But after these difficult couple of years,
even more so.
Like, think of the cries that went out into the universe for understanding, for meaning, for help, just think of how those prayers are kind of coalescing together and allowing people to find each other that may never have been found.
Yeah. No, it's true. And so I guess kind of continuing on too, because in terms of like building our relationships and things like that, we just had Truth and Reconciliation Day, which I think pretty much everybody thinks that this is a great thing. It's I don't like to call it a holiday.
Yeah, because, I know. It's not a holiday.
Because it's not. And there seems to be a whole bunch of confusion around it, but maybe that's just because we're in our early stages. I mean, we also have confusion around the fact in Nova Scotia that we have Heritage Day, which I love Heritage Day. I think it's so fantastic that Nova Scotia came up with a holiday to celebrate our heritage of different people. And then every year, I have to correct people, it's not Family Day. It's not Family Day. In Ontario, it's Family Day. It's Heritage Day here. And every year we celebrate a different great Nova Scotian or group of Nova Scotians, right?
That's great.
So I love that. And so I think maybe it's just because we're in these early stages of this truth and reconciliation that people, there's a lot of confusion, behind it of like, do I get the day off or not kind of thing, right? But I kind of, so I struggle with calling it a holiday, but essentially, for the lack of better term, we'll call it a holiday. It's an interesting point, but like, I guess from you, I mean, you obviously don't speak on behalf of all Indigenous people throughout our country, but where do you think, do you think this was a step in a positive direction? How do you feel it's going in terms of like coming around to, being on the same page? Like, how do you feel as an Indigenous person?
We have a long, long way to go. During COVID, there was a mass awakening to racial injustice for the first time. I mean, people of color, Indigenous, Black, Asian communities, we have been screaming, our hoof. The political leaders of, the other generations before me, they have been screaming to be heard, pounding to be heard. And because there were no seats at the table, it was like a little whisper in the wind to the rest of Canada. And I mean, all of our stories, they've been with us for a long time. Truth and reconciliation, all of these things. We just honestly thought all Canadians know, they don't care. So when we realized that the mass hypnosis, this lack of information that just permeated every Canadian, non-Indigenous person, we realized, oh wow. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was huge in bringing the stories to the front. This was a 7-year gathering time where thousands of stories from residential school survivors were heard.
Yeah.
And many Canadians discovered it. They could be a part of it. They could come and listen. And they happened in almost all the major cities in Canada. But a lot of the times people just ignored it. Right. So this was a huge event, 7-year event. And then the whole the big report was revealed, and then the 94 calls to action. Yep. So all of this stuff was coming out, but it was because of that awakening to racial injustice that happened during the isolation time that opened people, and then the children were found, the 215
the first
graves,
the
first
yeah,
ones.
the first.
Now there's over 10,000, which we knew about, but once it's like a global community finally went, oh.
Yeah,
that's how come we didn't know this? How come we didn't know this? And all of a sudden, people cared to find out. Yeah. And Orange Shirt Day is on September 30th. Yep. And it starts as Orange Shirt Day because Phyllis Webstad, it's her story that was collected during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where when her parents scraped together and got money for an orange shirt, and when she went to residential school, they took it from her. And she never saw it again. So that was like a heartbreak for her. Yeah. So Orange Shirt Day was to honor her and that story of that one little girl that represented so many. So the truth, so this day is not a holiday. To me, it's not a day to celebrate. It's a day to mark. Right. And I thought, a lot of Indigenous people thought that it would be a day of organizations and government actually spending time learning or honoring or education about the history with Indigenous people, Canadian policies and government treatment of Indigenous peoples. So a lot of people will never ever care what it is. Right. That'll just be the truth of it.
Of course, no, it's true.
And then some will go, I'm wearing an orange shirt, and then that's all they'll ever know.
Right.
And all they'll ever care
about. Change their Facebook picture, kind of thing. Yeah.
And some will actually do the work. And I would say more than ever, there are people with true humility and curiosity. And that's the beauty, the curiosity of finding out the truth and finding out how they have been complicit. Because every Canadian has been complicit to the suffering of Indigenous people by the ignorance of it. And it's time we all figure that out, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, when a lot of this started to kind of come out, obviously it happened during my lifetime. Yep. 38 years old, it happened during my lifetime, and I had no idea. No one told me, no one whatever. It's not in our history books. Yep. Nothing. And I knew, about residential schools, but I didn't know about residential schools. It's one of those things, right? Yeah. And then obviously things started to come out, and you're just kind of like, why wasn't I ever taught this stuff? And it's it kind of hammers home a little bit. I mean, my wife's Indigenous. She, her father, it just goes to show you how messed up racism can be. Her father is would also be Indigenous, and so what it was her grandfather, so his father, was not Indigenous, married an Indigenous woman, and had 4 boys. Now, my wife's father was the only one that looked Indigenous. and he got beat for it, right? So it's one of these things where it's like how messed up it can be, where it's you marry an Indigenous person, you have kids with an Indigenous person, and yet you're derogatory and cruel towards them and the one boy that turned out to look Indigenous, right? So it hammers home a little bit more personal to me, just because it's my wife, and you see the effects that it happens on it, like, because my wife didn't grow up living in that community, because her father left home at a very young age because he was abused, right? So he just was separated from all of that. He was just his own person and really didn't align with anybody. And my wife is kind of the same. She is her own person. She just aligns with herself, like, kind of thing, right? She doesn't have that kind of community connection. Yeah. And to me, I'm really big into it. Like, my last name's Conrad, so German is big. That's where the name comes from. I also know that I have on my mother's side, like maternal side, I have there's Irish and there's French, and I love that idea, right? I love the knowing where I come from. I spent a month in Ireland when I was in my early 20s. I just love knowing that history, and that's what I want for my son, right? And I have a 2-year-old son, and I want him to know not only about my side, but about the side that his mother comes from, which would be the French and the Indigenous side as well. So I'm trying to have a little bit more of an interactive, just trying to be a little bit more interactive. I can't wait to the point where he's at a point where he can learn more and can really be more interactive. And I know he's going to love the music and things like that, and I can't wait to expose him to some of that stuff as well. But just having him learn the culture and kind of know where he comes from. The problem with it is because of what happened, like, my wife doesn't really know. She was told when she was younger what her heritage, but it doesn't make sense, I guess, because she was always told she was Apache, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense in coming from Quebec. So there's a huge disconnect there. So I feel a little bit bad in that sense, right? So I've actually been advocating that we should maybe try Ancestry.com, like both of us, and I want to learn more about me, but she should learn more about herself and kind of explore that a little bit more, because then we can also kind of pass it down to my son. So, but
that's her journey, right?
It is.
It's a painful thing within the community. So she's got to find her own way there.
She does.
Your enthusiasm is one thing, but if you were in Germany and your parents were part of, the Reich, you might have a little harder time, right? So
100%.
So you have to have patience and understand that it's a lot more complicated than just, let's go to Ancestry.com. That's a white man's way of,
it is,
right? Honestly, those aren't attached to the stories by the elders and the community has everything to do with us finding our way home. So if she doesn't have a community, she's got to find her way there on her own.
100%. And I will completely admit that I am, obviously white male, but on top of that, also have the mentality of I'm Mr. Fix-It kind of thing.
I get
let's fix it kind of thing, right? Yeah. So I accept that, and accept that it's not always the right way. But
it's enthusiastic. I get that.
It is. It's enthusiasm. It's and I think there is something. I mean, also I think there's something in me a little bit that is calling for a certain spirituality and things like that. I think I'm excited to explore things that I never really got a chance to know.
Well, what I say to a lot of non-Indigenous people is that your own heritage, like you said, you're being called. All human beings were land-based people. at some point.
Yeah.
So yes, it goes further back in European countries, but it's there. It's there. And I think, if you're wanting to return to spirit, return to the land, and you can guarantee that somewhere along your lineage, your ancestors were land-based people. And so to follow that route will hopefully bring you back to what you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a good amount of time kind of looking into the Irish side of it. As controversial as it may be to some people, I've grown up being an anti-monarchist, just simply due to the fact that my grandfather was proud of his Irish lineage and things like that. So so there's a little bit of that kind of in me as well, because I'm just kind of like, whatever. I'll be the first one to say it's time to leave the Commonwealth. Time to get away with certain things, and let's move on to other things. But some people don't like that. Back to you personally, I guess. So I listened to, still on topic, but you. So I listened to Silent No More. I really liked it. I thought it was really cool. I liked the video too. Clearly you recorded that somewhere in very cold weather, though, because I could see your breath in some of it. It seemed like.
But Silent No More?
I'm pretty sure I saw. Really? There was times I could see your breath, and
really?
I was Maybe I'm paying way too much attention to the video.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but there was times.
Oh no, it was raining on one of our marches.
Okay, maybe
That was a cold day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was filmed over
several times and everything. Yeah. So, but I liked the song. It was, and I mean, you've won awards. I think I read somewhere it was 5 awards for your songwriting.
No, more like 15.
Okay, 15. So there you go. So I'm downplaying you.
No, it was. I have acting awards for about 5. Anyway, Silent No More came about because it was a song that I wrote for my TEDx talk.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And my TEDx talk is called Silent No More.
Yeah.
Using your voice to end violence against women.
Right.
And I had a totally different song in mind at the end of it, but here I was getting a month out, 2.5 months out before the performance date, and I called my co-writer Robert Walsh and I said, Robert, we need to write a song. And I said, do you think we can do it? I know I can't get to you, but what do you think? And I go, I have an idea. And I sent him the little thing, and he goes, okay. And we wrote it over Zoom and phone. And
awesome.
And we did get together to record it. And so Silent No More basically took my talk, and I capsulized it all into one. So that was the song at the end of my TEDx talk.
Awesome. Yeah. What was it like doing a TED Talk? It's an interesting procedure, from my understanding.
Oh yeah. As an Indigenous person, doing a TEDx talk and being a member of the professional speaking industry, there's a beautiful, logical, Western way of doing things, and it's brilliant. It's sharp. It's to the point. It's effective, and difficult for an Indigenous woman. I had a hard time.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful box that you have to fit in, and it's very, very precise about what you need to do. And I rewrote my talk about 54 times, but that's nothing. I've heard other people rewrote it 200 times. So rewriting it and trying to get it in this formula. And what I discovered was it's so helpful in helping you focus.
Yeah.
It's like, because the formula is so strategic, you need to take this, because there's every way you can describe a subject. But for me, I once I realized there was this formula, that I went, but I'm Indigenous and I'm not meant to fit in it. And I'm also a performer. So it's like, how do I bring story into this? And so for me, the real magic of speaking happened when I took all the beautiful knowledge from my professional brothers and sisters in the speaking world and TEDx, and then I took the wisdom of my teachers from the Indigenous community, who said, no, you don't write anything down, you speak from your heart, So you have those two camps, and I brought them both together. So to me, it was a really challenging really challenging time, but incredibly rewarding, because the subject matter was very difficult. I didn't go in choosing that I was going to talk about ending violence. The topic chose me. In fact, I rewrote it, 30 times, trying to not let this topic be, because I didn't want to talk about sexual violence. Who wants to? That's the whole problem, right?
Of course. Yeah.
But here's the magic of it. This is when I say the topic chose me, because I started writing it, and right around the time that my talk came out was the Me Too movement. And I went, you're kidding me.
Right.
So all of a sudden, all these people with a platform were being asked to be truthful about their experiences, and here I was, also sharing my story without knowing that this movement was time for, in the rise of the sacred feminine, the voices were rising, and I just happened to be a part of it. So it's sort of one of those miracle moments that was difficult, because during the writing of it, I mean, if you watch it, you'll hear me talking about this lump in my throat, this burning lump in my throat. And during the writing of it again, 35 years later, I got the lump in my throat again. It's like it came back viscerally, so I could remember it and talk about it.
Right.
And it was awful. So it was like a great return.
So I mean, it's interesting what you say there about, like, the struggle of being someone who's Indigenous, and then I don't know, for fitting back in and kind of fitting yourself into that Western world. I guess that's, I mean, and actually another note that I had too was that you got to perform in front of royalty, which also must have been a bit of a struggle. A bit of a struggle for me, and I'm not Indigenous. I'm just anti-monarchist because of what they did to the Irish.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I guess.
How do I do it?
Yeah. How do you get there?
Well, do you know, I'm a Métis person.
Yeah.
And Métis people are mixed.
Yeah.
So we are First Nations and European.
Right.
And so we already have a different outlook. I mean, Indigenous people were treated very different. All three Indigenous peoples of Canada, Turtle Island, of Canada especially, we're treated very differently from the government, by the government. And of course, they systematically tried to erase and eradicate and kill. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, family ties. Family ties. They tried to destroy family ties, and by treating your brothers and sisters, your relatives, different than you, is a great way to do that. And taking children away, and moving, like relocating whole communities, and so Métis people, we have been integrating the two cultures since we began as a people.
Right.
And we take family very seriously. Family ties are very important. Because there's also a huge Christian element, Catholic element to Indigenous, to Métis people, as well as this never having completely let go of land-based teachings, right? So Métis people have been doing that balancing act, and to me, when I really came into my own truth, my own settled in my bones, was when I just went, when I made peace within me. Mm-hmm. And when you make peace within, then you can make peace without. And so for me, singing for the Queen, or singing for, when I lived in Saskatchewan, I was like, I called myself the Métis pinup girl. So whenever celebrities or whenever dignitaries came to town, I was the one they called. Hey, bring Andrea in to come sing. So, so I was kind of used to that. How
does that feel?
Well,
to be the, do you feel used at all in that way, though?
No, because I believe my purpose. I know what my purpose is.
Okay.
I'm one of those people that I gave away my career very, very early on. I went, I'm not going to survive in this industry. And at the time, I think it was the music industry. The music industry, acting, film and television industry, all of it is really quite toxic, and the goal is what you're being sold is for fame and fortune.
Right.
And ultimately that means nothing. Indigenous people, we care deeply about being of service to each other. The spirit of reciprocity is that how can I be of service to my community, and how can I uplift, the community and mankind, and the world, and all species. How can I uplift, or as my elder says, how can I uplift creation? I can lift it up or I can tear it down. And so for me, I gave over my career early because I'm like, okay, I can see that I can sing, and but it will kill me. I will be destroyed in this place. So if I'm meant to be here, then, and that's my contribution as a human being to this world, then you've got to help me make sure I'm doing something that matters. I'm not doing this. So I had this deal with Creator or the grandmothers, I had this fight going, I'm not doing this unless it matters.
Right.
So I really gave over my career very early, and that was a survival mode. And since then, I've actually truly had faith that everything that comes out of me and the things that I'm brought to and the places that I'm asked are of service. There is a reason I'm there. So I try not to make it about me, because then that's a slippery slope of hell.
Fair enough.
And it's not good enough. It's not good enough to be there for me. It's either got to be there for others or I'm not interested.
Well, looking at your long resume, you've giving that up and just kind of allowing the universe to take you on the journey has brought you on an incredible journey. You have quite an impressive, anyone listening, I suggest you go and check our website out. You're quite an impressive person.
Aww,
and there's quite a bit. So I was pretty excited to have a chat with you, just simply based on that, because I was like, there's so much that we could talk about. The only thing is we try not to keep these too long.
Yeah.
I guess the one thing that I kind of want to leave, because we talked about a lot about your detailing your career and those things. Where do you feel that we can go, as Canadians, as First Nations, as treaty people? Mm-hmm. Where do you think we need to go from here? Do you have an opinion at all of how we can bridge that gap? Because I would love to live in a world where we can, we see our strengths. It's funny, I was just talking about this last week, how my view of a federal Canada, the Federation of Canada, and how I don't want to see necessarily anyone leave, because I feel that we all bring a certain balance, and that we can contribute in ways that make Canada a great place to live for everybody. I was a firm believer that that first time that we discovered those bodies, and it was it's okay to have a more somber Canada Day, because we discovered something as a nation that may have been known to part of our nation for a long time, but as a nation it became public, it became public knowledge. And my firm belief is that as a responsible Canadian, we would, a responsible homeowner doesn't let a whole room fall to shit. You take care of your home, where you live. If you have pride of ownership, then you want to make all aspects of your home good, and have that pride. And that's what I think, for me, it's okay to criticize and our government for our past decisions, to have that self-reflection of maybe I have been I don't know, due to my ignorance, what's the word I'm looking for, but just basically I've allowed things to just kind of go by. And I think it's a proud Canadian should be paying attention to truth and reconciliation, and should want to have all of our citizens in all of our places, our house should be in order. So where do we go from here? Because I'm like I said, white male. Coming from your point of view, where do we go? How do we bridge this, and how do we get to a point where we're good? And yeah.
Well, we have to recognize that it's not good, right?
Exactly.
Like we just have to start with truth. We got to start there, and to recognize we got a long way to go. And this idea of coming together does not mean sameness. We don't ever have to be the same, and we have to though come with with humility, with a beautiful humble heart to each other, to ourselves. No, and maybe even better is we have to come in a humble heart to our ignorance.
Yeah.
That is a big, brave step, because if there's one thing that I've known that the colonial model does not like is admitting to ignorance.
Yeah.
It is not a popular state of being, is to admit our ignorance or humanity's ignorance.
Yeah.
So to admit that you come from a place of nothing, to I know nothing, and because I know I've come across many conversations where I've met all of my non-Indigenous white friends who felt they had to be experts in Indigenous wisdom and teachings and knowledge, and I went, we're the experts in that.
Right, yeah.
We're the experts. You don't have to be the experts. Please don't try to be, because that just means you're going to exploit the knowledge and take it away and become experts. No, we are the experts. Just for once, come in a humble way to the experts and ask, not for your forgiveness, but to come to the knowledge that we've already sent out there. Because in the beginning we'd be like, can't answer every question you have, but we've all the wisdom, the courses are out there, the books are out there, the movies are out there, the TV series are out there, the songs are out there, the plays are out there. There's one coming up in Halifax. There's knowledge to be had.
Right.
And so if non-Indigenous Canadians come in a humble way, they can find the knowledge. They don't have to go to an Indigenous person and say, teach me, because we won't do it. We're done. We're done helping. We're done helping non-Indigenous people find out. We've done the work. We don't want to keep re-traumatizing ourselves with the stories over and over and over. Right? We're done. All of that's out there. You can now find it. But come in a humble way. And that's one way. So that's one way to help heal the rift with Indigenous peoples. But to me, where we're really going to make the strides is when, if you think of all the traumas that European and settlers came to this land, how traumatized they were because of the colonizations that happened on their lands, they brought that here, and it's unhealed. All of that trauma, all of that wounding has been passed through those lineages without ever, though I just ran away from it because it was so awful. Well, they brought it here and not knowing that unfinished, healing doesn't work that way. Trauma doesn't work that way. It gets passed down. Trauma gets passed down. So my invitation is for you, when you talked about your lineages, is to go, and to me this is a spiritual way of doing it, but there's also, for the logical brain, like you said, I'm a white male who's like, I'm gonna fix it. So if a logical, there's a logical way you can go back and look. I'm sure there's books and there's lineages and there's, ancestry, what you call it. But there's stories in your lineage that you yourself can heal. You can go back and say, it ends here. Because I'm willing to look at the trauma that happened to my ancestors, that I am somehow being a part of. Either it's my complicitness or complacency, my ignorance, my willful blindness, my violence, whatever it is that is within us. And I've had to do the same. I'm a half-breed too, so I've got lots of European blood that I've had to do the same work, know. And I've got ancestors on both sides that need some cleaning house. So it might be a little bit more mysterious, but to me that is where the real work happens. So when a person decides and says it stops with me, they will be amazed at the journey that unfolds in front of them of how to do that. And it might be therapy, it might be talking to ancestors, it might be all of those things that maybe were not available to you or you weren't interested in before. But if you say it stops with me, I am not going to perpetuate this colonial model, this colonial mindset anymore. I'm going to decolonize so that my family never has to perpetuate this. You will be amazed at what unfolds in front of you.
Break the cycle.
And it does, and it requires you taking your ancestors into account.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, like, whether they realize it or not, there was a lot of ugly history here.
Oh yeah.
Lots.
Oh yeah.
On all fronts. There was some. Obviously it was people came here to colonize.
Oh yeah.
First the French, and and then the English got involved, and there was wars and all this stuff that happened. But it created a lot of ugliness, and there's, you're right. There's trauma within this country, but on the I guess the side of it, because people came to this country, and I'm talking like 15,000 years ago. People had to travel through, based on what we see. The First Nations people that came here traveled across. Some. Yeah.
That's not the stories we hear.
Really? Okay.
We're not going there today.
We're not going there today?
No,
okay. All right. Because there's some there you see.
But do you see how you went? That's a very scientific way of looking at it.
It is.
So it's truth. It's not truth. That's one way.
Okay.
Our creation stories are very different.
Well, this is see, I would love to learn a lot more. Because this is the thing is you see, more recently reports 15,000 years ago they came across Bering Strait and all this stuff, right? So interesting. Okay. Yeah.
And those stories are very different. There's some who can tell you. You go up north and you can hear some of the stories. You go down south, you'll hear different stories. You go to the middle, you'll have very different. All across Turtle Island, you'll hear different stories.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very, very interested to hear more. And we do have to kind of wrap this up.
I know. We're not going there today.
We're not going there, I guess. Yeah. But it could definitely be a part 2, I guess, at some point in time, because I'm fascinated to learn more. So with that, I guess, I'll thank you very much for coming here and sharing your time and your knowledge with me and with anyone who's listening. And you're welcome back anytime, because I feel like I have a lot more to go through and everything. But thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been a deep and juicy conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Also, last thing here, just do a shout out. We're at the Brown Hound pub in Halifax. Thank you very much for hosting us. It's filled up quite a bit since we started getting here, so it's gotten a little bit louder, but thank you very much for hosting us. All right, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.